Ricky was awesome.
When I think of A's homers, I actually do think of you. And I also think of Grant Cohn, who joins us now on the River Islands guest line. As all guests on 95.7 The Game appear on the River Islands guest line. Covers the 49ers for Sports Illustrated. Grant, I don't know if you've been listening to our conversation all this morning. It's been, it's been about the Giants. You want to throw it out there? It's been a lot.
I'm not pretending to be some I'll zig when everybody's zagging guy. Like, I'm being dead serious here. I look back at my own daily criticisms of Klay Thompson when he was struggling. And, I listened to you kind of explain about how, hey, knowing what I know now and what I did with Javon Kinlaw, I've seen you have this kind of retrospective conversation with yourself. And I'm thinking look, I was trying to call it like I see it, but also I think there's a way I could have said things and done things that would have been a little more humane and maybe with a little more tact, I think is the way I would put it. And I look at the Chapman thing and everybody's piling on him. And I feel like it's fair to pile on somebody who's not very good, but even more so when I feel like they don't care or they're not putting in the work or they're kind of got a poor attitude or maybe I don't think they're a good person. And I just don't know if any of those things applies to Chapman. And now I just kind of feel bad for him. And I saw a guy in the 8th inning last night pop up, boot a couple balls, and I'm like, oh, dude, everyone's going to crush him, and they're going to hashtag him to death with horrible nicknames. I just feel bad for him. I'm not saying he's good. I'm not saying that he deserves all of this empathy. I'm not saying you can't say, dude, you're not as good right now. What I'm saying is I feel bad for the dude. And I think a lot of people are just calling me soft this morning, and I feel like he's going through it, and I don't really want to pile on. I don't know. I'm not even asking a question. You cover these guys on a daily basis. When I say that, what do you think?
That's fair. I think it's good to have empathy for professional athletes. They are human beings. And just because Matt Chapman's going through a slump or he's not living up to his contract, it doesn't mean that he's open season for some of the most vile things you could say behind an anonymous Twitter account. That's absolutely true. But there's also a balance there. He is a professional athlete and he is struggling. And part of that contract is being willing to take some flack. And so where's the line? And I think that's for every adult to think about themselves. You don't want to be someone who's causing him more angst, but at the same time, it's sports and you're allowed to be upset. I mean, if he was on the Philadelphia Phillies, probably worse. It's not like this is something systemic to the Bay Area. And it's baseball. He's going to get it every day until he plays better. So I understand where he's coming from. I understand where Giants fans are coming from. It's a tough situation. These are the kind of things you deal with when you're 800 games under 500.
What? Because I love that you're now really talking about the Giants, and so I appreciate it. I know you're known for the Niner stuff. If you were covering,
I can't stop watching this. This is incredible.
Well, what aspects are the most fascinating to you? For someone that you're in the locker room with the Niners all the time. If you were on the beat of the Giants, what are the questions you would be asking? And who would you be directing them to?
It seem like the questions are really best pointed at Buster. It's not fair to just roast Tony Vitello every day. But it seems like you had a team that was remarkably consistently mediocre for a long time. And then Buster comes in and thinks he's going to finally break out of that. And he makes these big investments and they're awful. I can't think of a team that did something like that. You're either the Niners where you're on the cusp of something or you're trying to rebuild. This is just an expensive, bad team and they're locked into it for years. And it seems like Buster is largely responsible. And it's kind of funny to think what Bob Melvin and Farhan are thinking privately. Sure, I wasn't great, but I got scapegoated. Look what Buster's doing.
Grant, can I ask you a question? You've obviously covered all these teams, the Giants, the Warriors, the Niners. The differences from the media perspective of covering each of these sports because of the length of the seasons, right? 17 games in the NFL.
Also, the affiliations with the stations, I think, is another.
That's another aspect of it.
And I'm not dogging the guys across the street. I'm saying that they've had a long, fruitful relationship, and how the tone in which they're covered, I do think matters.
Well, but also, I guess my question is how you build relationships with some of these players from a media perspective. How does it shift from sport to sport?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, in baseball, you got to see these guys every day for 6 months. In football, you see them in the locker room, but it's really just 17 games. So maybe it's tougher. Maybe you feel like if you're covering the Giants, you feel like you're almost part of the family and you don't want to be too mean to Matt Chapman. Maybe it's a little bit different. I could see that. It seems like people are trying to rally around him and protect him, which is admirable. I don't know if that would really necessarily happen in the NFL. That's a good question. It is a different culture.
Do you, like, when you've been covering guys, like, I feel like I'm watching Chapman's confidence be zapped right now. There was a time where I almost felt like I could feel Alex Smith and the confidence, like he was just processing everything. It was just so much. Trey Lance, I think at one point in the preseason, I could feel every throw was like a referendum on if he's even an NFL player or not. When you're watching these guys, how much of the psychology and the confidence, I don't think we do a good job in the media talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like everyone's piling on Chapman when really, like, Adames could be part of it too. I mean, there's so many people who are underperforming, but he's the worst, so he's the target of it all. And it seems like it spirals. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, it's like it's just kind of the natural essence of professional sports. And my heart goes out to him, but he knows that this is what he signed up for, and he may not be. He's gonna climb his way out of this. He's a vet. He's been around for a long time. I can only imagine how hard it is to sleep at night. I mean, in baseball, slumps are so awful. And it seems like it's different than in football and in basketball. Like, you have to be up at night being like, am I ever going to come out of this? And Chapman doesn't know if he's ever going to come out. He will. He's not a great hitter, but he'll go back to hitting 240 eventually. But right now, he probably has to wonder.
You make your money on the internet. I mean, that's really like, right? Like, obviously covering the team and videos and journalism and the stuff you put out on Sports Illustrated. If they asked you, whether it's the NFL, NBA, or MLB, to do a symposium for the team, what would your guidelines be for these players on how to navigate the internet in this scrutiny era? Because you're one of the people every day I'm basically a critic. You know, I'm praising or critiquing or analyzing what I'm seeing. And if they asked you, Grant Cohn, to like sit in front of the entire room and give a symposium on how these athletes should navigate the internet, what would your suggestion be?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me, at least in the NFL, it's so different going from college to the pros. In college, at Michigan, at Washington, you're the hero of the campus and everyone loves you even if you lose a game. But in the NFL, if you're a first-round pick and you're not a Pro Bowler, like, people are going to let you hear it. And it's not just going to be fans. It could be media too. So I think you gotta turn off the social media stuff. You can't listen to that stuff because it's only going to frustrate you at best. You have to find a way to turn that stuff off. And for your critics in the media, you can use them as inspiration or fuel to prove them wrong. But I think that's all it is. And I think instead of maybe starting a fight with one like Javon Kinlaw or trying to prove it that way, like, start a dialogue with people. Like, hey, man, you don't know me at all. Like, let's talk about what you think I am. And I think Chapman could do that with people who are covering the team. It's just with Chapman, it's not like he's a young up-and-coming guy who's trying to establish himself. It seems like he may be on the other end, like toward the end, and he has to prove that he has a little bit of gas left.
Grant Cohn joining us here on the Morning Roast, covers the 49ers for Sports Illustrated. Speaking of social media, Brandon Aiyuk.
Oh, my goodness.
So I just going to...
Oh, my God.
I mean, it's June 1st. I know the Niners have said, and John Lynch kind of tongue-in-cheek, hey, we're open for business. You want to come get Brandon Aiyuk? Jeremy Fowler, ESPN, saying, yeah, untradeable. No one wants him. All the other teams know it. No one wants to trade for this guy. They don't even know what his health is. Doesn't show up. Total head case. I guess my only question is this, Grant. If you had an opportunity to sit down with Brandon Aiyuk, what would be the first question you ask him?
Dude, why are you doing this to yourself? Why are you doing this to yourself? I understand the Niners screwed you over from your perspective and you feel like a victim, but it seems like you're now putting the nail in the coffin of your own career. Like, why are you doing that? And I don't really know what's going on with him. Last year, it seemed like he was in shape and wanted to play, and the Niners didn't want him to play or something was going on. Now he's not showing up. And if you look at the pictures he posts on Instagram, a couple of things stand out. One, his expression. He's not smiling. He's not frowning. He looks kind of blank, which is always alarming to me. And then he doesn't look in shape at all. His face looks puffy. You know, he looks like a guy who's kind of given up. And I don't want to project too much, but it seems like that's kind of the rumors around him. Like, people are whispering, like, I don't know about his mental health right now. And just look at his face in the pictures he posts. I am concerned about him, and I'd hate to think that a guy who's 28 years old with this much potential and ability would just give up. So I don't know. That's where I'm at.
I'm with you. I'm very worried about him, like the individual. Forget football. Like it's bizarre. Well, you got that backdrop, and then I don't know. The Rams make one of the biggest deals that I can think of in like forever, and they go get Myles Garrett. And all I kept thinking was, the Niners have kind of set themselves up to where they're boxed in for 2026. And what I mean by that is their draft history doesn't have a lot of stud young guys. There's guys you like, but there's no stud like anchor dudes that you're like, oh, Pro Bowler for the next 2 or 3 years. And then you look at their finances, and it feels like they continue to double down on guys from the 2019 run or the 2021 run, and we're entering 2026, 2027, and it feels like they're all in financially for right now, and yet you still feel very far away from Seattle and the Rams as they're making this deal for the now, and it's like almost like a triple whammy. Do you get where I'm going?
Absolutely. I mean, you're so invested in this core players that you've had for so long. You'd think that trading for someone like Myles Garrett would be up their alley, considering it was for the Rams, or at least making sure the Rams don't get him. I keep going back to 4 years ago when the Niners traded for Christian McCaffrey. A big reason they did, and Jed York talked about this, was they were legitimately concerned that the Rams were going to trade for Christian McCaffrey. And they talked about it internally, and according to Jed, Kyle Shanahan was against trading for Christian McCaffrey. I was at the time too. He'd had so many injuries. He was expensive. And Jed was like, okay, are you comfortable with the Rams getting him? And Kyle said no. And they traded. Does this not apply to Myles Garrett? Like, if the Niners had Myles Garrett, I think all of us would pick the Niners to win the Super Bowl, and they'd be the favorites. They'd really be in a great position. But now the Rams are that team, and the Niners seem like well behind them. And maybe things could break the Niners' way in terms of health. But barring that, it seems like another year where they'll be in the mix, but they won't be the Super Bowl champion. And that's too bad when you just gave Trent Williams an extension.
Well, the other elements of this team, like the financial structures of where they're at, they've renegotiated a bunch of guys and kicked the can down the road. Well, now and over the next couple of years, you have to pay the piper. So when fans see, hey, you've got $75 million, give or take, in free cap, well, they need that money because they're so over it next year and the year after that. And so that's the element financially. Then there's the draft history where it's like, think of just this year. You didn't address the offensive line. You traded down. You took a receiver who may or may not get on the field by week 7, all right? And your number one opponent just bolstered their defensive line, and you don't even know who your left guard is. Meanwhile, your top draft pick, which should be plug and play, wasn't to solidify a weakness. It's to maybe have him contribute at some point down the line. And this is after you took another receiver when you had 2 wide receivers. Like, I feel like there's the money aspect and then there's the draft history. They're kind of all coming to a head on this Myles Garrett thing. And it's really I'm not saying they can't be good this year. I'm saying this is why you couldn't make the move. You didn't have ammunition and you don't have any wiggle room.
Yeah, that's why drafting matters. You know, if the Niners had gotten a legit Pro Bowl pass rusher with the 11th pick last year, maybe they could have traded for Myles Garrett, but they didn't. I mean, and the Rams did. And the thing is interesting with the Niners, and a lot of these Bay Area teams, they operate on these 2 timelines. So the Warriors do it too. Like, the Niners have the oldest core in the NFL, but they won't go all in because they have to maintain their future flexibility. And they're kind of working on both fronts at the same time, which leaves them in this spot where they're like one of the 8 best teams in the league, but they're never really making that move like the Rams do every few years to give themselves the best chance possible to win a Super Bowl in the present.
Do they feel comfortable? Like, I saw the Tom Tolbert interview, and they're sitting in the backyard with Tolbert. I'm talking about Lynch and Shanahan. Yeah. And look, maybe it's the end of the season, and it's the offseason. They're relaxed. You know, it's a situation. Oh, you can't hear? Okay. It's a situation where maybe they don't, like, you know, Tom, look, I love Tom, but Tom's not going to, like, here's a bunch of gotcha questions. That's not his nature. And so they felt comfortable, but I just feel like everybody's a little too comfortable in Santa Clara. Just in general. Like, there's just not that sense of urgency.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like they fill up that stadium? They had a couple of scary years with Chip Kelly and Jim Tomsula. They never want to go back to that. No, they haven't won a Super Bowl, but they fill up the stadium. They get a lot of positive press, and they're cool with that, as opposed to the Rams, who have won a Super Bowl, but really don't fill up that SoFi Stadium. They still haven't really built a true LA fan base. And it seems like they're desperate to do that, where the Niners are like, we don't have to. If we go get Myles Garrett, will it guarantee a Super Bowl for us? No. So why should we spend all that when we're already in a great spot to make a ton of profit? That's kind of how it feels. And maybe that's jaded, but doesn't it seem that way to you?
I mean, I'm a season ticket holder, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, I just 2026, like, I think we're going to be a good team. 2027, like, look at the numbers on the 2027, and like, I don't feel great. Like, I don't. I feel like we're all in for 2026, and yet I look around and I do not think we are one of the top 4 or 5 teams. I think we have a chance. We have a top 3 or 4 coach, no doubt about it. The rest of the roster, like, we need some things to break, big time.
And what's scary about this move, too, is like the Niners, Brock, John, Kyle aren't going to be here indefinitely without a Super Bowl ring. They're entering year 10, and they're still on the cusp of getting one. And if they got Myles Garrett, everyone would get extensions, and they'd be here a long time. But now that he's with the Rams, if they don't get back to a Super Bowl, they don't get back to an NFC Championship, and they win and the Rams win a Super Bowl, you wonder, like, will Brock be here in 2028, making $53 million a year with no ring? Will John be here? There's a lot of uncomfortable questions that happened because of this one particular trade, because the Rams were aggressive and the Niners stood pat.
Grant, what did you make of Pelissero basically tweeting out and saying, yeah, I envision no scenario in which Kyle Shanahan or John Lynch ever get fired from San Francisco?
It felt like an interesting choice of words, like get fired.
Yeah.
Okay, I could see that. Like Andy Reid didn't technically get fired by the Eagles. His contract just expired. And I could see Jed wanting to do that. He didn't even want to fire Jim Harbaugh. They had to call it a mutual parting of the ways because he understood how insane it would be to fire a coach with the 7-something winning percentage. That being said, I think John Lynch's contract expires either after this year or next year. It's unclear. And Kyle's after next year or the year after. So what Jed could do is just say, look, we really like you. We're not going to fire you, but you haven't won a Super Bowl and you did miss the playoffs in 2024. So we want to see a little bit more. I would imagine John and Kyle want raises, and they're not cheap. So that Jed could just drag his feet and see where this goes, which is probably what I would do. And we'll see if these two get extensions. In the past, they would each get extensions with about 3 years left on their deal. It's not going down that way this time.
I mean, God, I'd love to work for Jed.
Would you?
I mean, seriously, I would.
You go to England, go to Leeds, dude. I think they got some openings.
Well, I mean, I'd have to start with a spreadsheet. Yeah. That being said, Grant, Aston Davis gets brought in. This is a kid from Cal that I liked coming out of the draft. He was a track guy. Like, I really did like him. I think the Jets have been kind of a dumpster fire, so I don't know what to make of him coming to the Niners on a 1-year deal. Does that say something about Raheem Morris, about their safeties, or is this just a flyer acquisition?
Well, he is a free safety, and he does have speed. And the Niners, I mean, to me, Siegel and Mustafa are strong safeties, and Jair Brown, I guess, is a free safety, but he runs a 4.6. It's not like you could really put him as a single high guy in center field and expect him to cover hash to hash. At least Aston Davis does have some speed and can theoretically do that. He's almost 30. He's been in the league a while. He's a fringe starter, and I think it's a perfectly fine move. It's a 49er move. You know what I mean? They didn't overpay for him. It's a 1-year deal. It's team friendly. They protected themselves. And it's so funny that it came a day after the Rams traded for Myles Garrett. Like the Rams made a Rams move, and the Niners made a corresponding Niner move. And, Parag strikes again, yada, yada, yada. He should be fine, but like he'd probably be the fourth safety on the team. He'd probably an upgrade over Saran Neal, which,
Yeah. Jason Pinnock. Remember they had Odom back there against Darnold a couple years ago?
Lamar?
Let me rat-a-tat-tat some young players. You saw them last week. They were working out. I know I don't want to gleam too much, but Kalen Black, give me a line or two on him.
They're making a point to throw him a lot of passes. And you know what I mean? How a team knows a narrative about a player, and the Niners drafted him higher than everyone else would have. So they're like, okay, what's the knock? He can't catch passes. Watch us throw 7 to him in 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s. And it looks like he has natural hands, good hand-eye coordination, can extend and catch the ball away from his frame. That's all good for a running back. He won't be a route runner like Christian McCaffrey, but no one is. So far, it looks like maybe the Niners were right about his skill set. We'll see if he can actually produce. It seems like he and Jordan James are kind of interchangeable, at least on a practice field. If Christian McCaffrey goes down, I bet those two would split carries and be used in the exact same way. So I like Kalen Black. He's older and it seems like he's ready to contribute. And then with Stribling, I think I was curious to see, like, where are you going to line up?
Yeah.
Are you really playing
How big
X
is
as
he?
a rookie, or are they going to put you somewhere where you can get on the field? Because if you're X, then you're not playing as a rookie until Mike Evans gets hurt. And they had him in the slot most of the day, which I thought was very interesting. And it made me think of Jordan Matthews from Once Upon a Time. He was on the Niners for a while, never really played much, but he was a second-round pick from Vanderbilt who was a really good slot receiver for a few years. What didn't really have the full route tree was a little bit of a linear player, but in the slot, he was big, fast, and a handful. And I think Stribling could be very productive right away in the slot while he's developing his route tree. If he ever develops the full thing, it's like he is already 23.
What about Romello Height? Because, he's the same age as Jared Verse, who's been in the league 2 years.
It's interesting to see how they're using him. He's not a DN. And so they had him standing up in a 2-point stance as an outside linebacker on the line of scrimmage, which to me is how he should be used. He should be in a position where he can drop into coverage. Otherwise, why do you have a 239-pound edge rusher? So I think we know how Raheem Morris wants to use him. He had Jalen Walker and James Pierce and Leonard Floyd and Byron Young and a lot of these smaller 3-4 outside linebacker types in the past. That's what Romello Height's going to be. But again, it's like, okay, Niners got Romello Height. Rams got Myles Garrett. Cool, though. Romello Height looks good. He looks good, but it's just dwarfed in comparison.
Myles Garrett had 23 sacks last year, and the Niners had 20 as a team. It's
franchise
so
low with one extra game.
It's so insane just to say that.
And then yesterday we interviewed the offensive line coach because all the Niners position coaches were made available, and all the beat writers just descended on the O-line coach. And they're like, so what do you think of Myles Garrett? And he was like, well, as you can imagine, we were caught off guard. And so this morning I just fired up a bunch of Myles Garrett tape, and I was just looking at it and thinking, like, this is terrible. Yikes. So that's what they got.
Oh, and then Aaron Donald saying, yeah, I'm flirting with coming back. So that'll be great.
The lock of the century.
He's coming back. Absolutely. Grant, good stuff, man. We'll do it again soon.
Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo comes back to the Rams too, and then everyone's in trouble. Watch out.
Jimmy G on the Rams.
Jimmy. Dude, does anyone have a better life real quick than Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah, Grant Cohn.
Come on. Is it you, Grant? No.
Yeah. Food reviews.
He's out. It's a walk-off.
Hyphy Burger is excellent.
I need to go to Hyphy Burger. I always drive past it downtown
There's two,
Oakland.
I think, now.
Okay.
There's West Oakland, right? And
yeah, they're franchising.
Yeah, they're franchising.
That's good. Let's go. Mr. Fab, he's still the owner.
They got that You Feel Me sauce. It's delicious. You feel me?
You feel me? I definitely feel. There you go. As I go Jonah Hill on you guys.
All right, is there any other Bay Area sports take you got to get off your chest? You look spicy today. You look like you're ready to give me something random.
Not really. I went to a Bay Area Ballers game at the Oakland Coliseum, and it was cool, but there were like 3,000 people there, and they lost 1-0, and it just was kind of depressing because I felt like I was in a Twilight Zone episode. Oh. I saw so many A's games in my childhood, and it was a lot of fun. The Dollar Wednesdays, everyone would be there. Yeah. It's just like, man, at least you can still go to this place, but it's like, gee, what happened? What happened to my city?
I know. It's hard. Hey, shout out to the Oakland roots, though. Got to know your roots, guys. Come on, let's go. Grant, good stuff, man.
We need you on the Valkyries.
Thanks for having me.
Why did you trade your first round pick?
Don't get me started on the Valkyries.
Hey, it's a big win in the Commissioner's Cup. Go.
I'll see you soon, dude.